Perth is with us. Vinny, good morning to you.
Good morning, how are you doing?
It's look, Robbie's right. We get carried away. We're just fans. But Robbie knows what it's like to have a little bit of pressure on you as a 17, 18, 19-year-old coming through.
Yeah, the best thing I suppose I can say is because this one's like me and Evan's father are probably best mates, so I've seen him grow up and as a kid in around the house and holidays together, all that stuff. So I'm reluctant. I certainly won't. I know you love playing people up a little bit.
We are so excited.
So I'll be even less than Robbie. But the only thing I can say is from knowing the kid so well is that and by the way, I had no impact in any way, shape or form in his career. Barely watched him play football, ironically, even though I'd known him quite well. Is that
you missed out there, Vinny?
Yeah. Yeah, he remind me of that, don't worry. But it's that he is it's duck to water, this stuff, honestly. And I've been lucky enough to be around people who've done quite well. I know Robbie quite well. I know Richard Dunn really well. And he's just very similar to them guys in terms of he's not going to get above him station anyway, shape or form anytime soon. So the pressure is one thing, and rightly so. He's been talked about as all these great things, but it doesn't bother him in the slightest, genuinely.
Nice of Roberto De Zerbi to rest him last night and only bring him off the bench for the last 25 minutes of the game, with the big game against France coming up from.
Yeah, it was. I expect him to be on the bench. Nothing more than he's been in. He's out. Welbeck came on and done quite well. So listen, if he's dovetailing with Danny Welbeck, that's okay with me. It looks like on paper he's ahead of Welbeck. But we'll see. I don't think at this stage it's any big deal that he comes out of a game here and there.
How does the Ida injury change the potential face of that Irish lineup for the France game? Yeah,
so my gut feeling was we may have went with Ida just because of the experience, and I know the guys in the camp really like what Ida brings to the team in terms of that focal point. But if we don't know what the injury is yet, haven't heard too much about it, so that may change, Shane. And look, as Robbie said, when you're playing week in, week out, as he is now, it's no shock that he's in a team. So therefore, at the level he's playing at, he's probably jumped ahead of a lot of the people like Troy Parrott and other guys. And Stephen's always been, for me, a really, really brave coach. I think this squad that we've put together over the last couple of years is a lot of heavy lifting, but I actually don't. That's why I thought Ida, if fit, would play. I think he's sort of found where he is now, and I don't think we'll see, like Joe Hodge didn't get picked for argument's sake. I don't think we see loads of changes at the moment. I think he's settled on where he's at, so I don't see a big change.
All right, that's what's coming out this afternoon. We'll obviously have a reaction to it on the show tonight with Nathan from 7 o'clock. Let's talk about the situation in the League of Ireland. It's a really interesting table at the moment. Rovers' difficulties is, I would argue, really great for the league, right?
Yeah.
If you're a Rovers fan, it's not great for you, but it's actually brilliant that they're not just winning the first 5 games of the season, 15 points on the table, swashbuckling their way through, and we're all like, well, this is going to be a procession, because it sucks the casual viewers in going, all right, so there's going to be a title race this season.
Yeah, I think while I fully expect them to win the league, that hasn't changed. I just think, yes, it's great for the league. It's another story. It's only 5 games in. So I was in Tolka Park the other night. They played Shelbourne. I probably agree with a lot what Stephen Bradley said after the game. I thought they were quite good. They were definitely the better team, but didn't create a whole lot of chances. So that would be my only concern as a coach. Not Conor Cairns in goal for Shelbourne wasn't overly worked, so that would be a big concern. There just seems to be a lack of real goal threats coming from them, and I know they scored 4 against Cork, but that was a strange game. But beyond that, just didn't see that sort of firepower and blowing teams away at the moment. But they're still playing quite well. I've seen them live, I think 3 times, and they've been really. It's not like this is where they're trying to find form, where they're not playing well, where things are going wrong, and there's infighting that you can see. It just seems they're short of a little spark to go on the run.
It's funny, I wanted to ask you, Vinny, but there was a couple of comments from Stephen Bradley after the game. People were asking him about the fact that some of the new signings, he didn't put them in at all at the start against Shelbourne at Tolka Park, and he said it was down to a bit of experience, and they've been here and done that. It was a Dublin derby, so I was thinking of the experience and understanding what the game was about, what it needed. That was my thinking. But surely if you're going to sign players, you still have to throw them in. You can't get experience in a Dublin derby without putting them in there.
Yeah, but there's a bit of a difference between, like, Tolka Park pitch at the moment is heavy, It's in good enough condition. I've seen it a lot worse. And there's just experience is the key. You look at a team at the top of the league, and albeit there's 2 centre halves playing them, balls from Poland, it's predominantly a League of Ireland team who've started well, because this time of the year training sessions are difficult, pitches are difficult, the grounds are difficult, and that makes complete sense to me in terms of what he done in terms of team selection. Like Richie Towell came in, obviously would have given them running power in midfield, and so I get what he's saying. It makes sense, but I hear your point. But the difference, if that had been a Dublin derby in Tala, I think you may have seen some of those new signs in the team. But no experience, and as I said, away Dublin derby, but it wasn't one of those. It was quite a boring match in many ways. It wasn't one of those Dublin derbies where it's blood and guts and thunder. It was a lot of possession from Rovers and not a lot from Shells. They set in a couple of counter attacks and could have nicked it at 1 or 2 stages, but it was very comfortable for Rovers. Just didn't get the goal.
We expect Rovers to get better. We expect Jack Byrne to grow into the season and Richie Towell to grow into the season, and those creative players that they have to come more to the fore. Is this maybe a conditioning thing where they're periodising to get ready and they're happy enough with where they are?
Well, that's what you'd say as a coach after a bad start, but no, I think they're
you mean you'd make stuff up, Vinny?
Yeah, that's nonsense. Like, they're fit enough, they're ready. There is obviously at the start of the season you're trying to find your feet, and it's very hard to explain to you. Pre-season in December, January. Now, we've had it long enough. Can be really difficult in terms of this country and weather, and you're predominantly on AstroTurf pitches, and then you go and play on a really difficult pitch in different venues or whatever. So, look, no, I think, like, I go back to Graham Burke's first half performance against Derry City was sensational. Like, so they've players that are near there. Ferrugia looks like he's going to kick on this year. He's someone that really is exciting in the league. I think Jack Byrne has just been average by Jack Byrne standards. So when a couple of these things come together, Johnny Kenny's finding his feet again back in the league. They've played Gaffney, Kenny, who's going to start. So I think they're near there. I think they're it's not doom and gloom, but at the same time, I said a couple of weeks ago, the wheels can come off very quickly. It's a huge game for them this week, a huge game, because if they didn't win then, that's 6 games is sort of a...
It's a pattern.
It's definitely, you can sort of find trends after 6 games, not 1 or 2.
So they've got Pats at home. You had very high praise for the job that Duffer did last season, and you've had another opportunity there to see them most recently. Are they lining up 3-4-3? It says in my I wasn't at the game.
No, it's to be fair, without the ball, it was everyone behind the ball, and
right.
It was a really low block, and it was sort of letting Rovers have it. And tactically very good. There's no spaces with him. Gavin Malloy, young player, midfielder, playing right side centre half with back 3. Right. Done really, really well. He was outstanding. So. But it is definitely backs to the wall. There's very little creativity to it. The challenge now for Duffer and Joey O'Brien, and they've spoken about it, is to get these players now to be better up the pitch. So Shelbourne aren't conceding a lot of goals, but they're not scoring goals, and they're not. And in the world of entertainment, you've got to create something. So while the fans will accept the Rovers' performance because it's Shamrock Rovers and you get a point, I think they'll want to see a little bit more from them at home, in particular in terms of as an attacking side.
How long does that take? What's realistic in terms of expectations for supporters?
Well, to come away from Duffer for a second, I said it before here. If I took over a club tomorrow and you're conceding goals, well, it's easy as a coach. You often hear coaches, and whether it's in England, anywhere, saying, "Oh, we're conceding goals and we've got to fix that," because that's the easiest training session to do. Defensive session, we don't break us down. The hardest session in football to do is creativity. That's why Pep is the best. When he was at Bayern, he had Lamb playing as a centre midfielder, or Cancelo, or the way Klopp does his stuff. That's how the elite managers take teams to a next level. Their coaching sessions are about, obviously they get the basics right, but it's about coming up with different ways of winning, and that's the hard part for any team. How long does it take? It depends on your players, and I would say to you, this Shelbourne team I really like them. I like what they're doing. I just use Gavin Malloy as one example. I think young kid playing men's football, doing really, really well, but they're probably short of one or two players that take them to the next level. And Sean Boyd's a big loss for them, but they're probably short of one or two of the best players in the league to help them go to the next stage.
Okay, if we think that there's a pattern emerging, or might be, after 6 games from Rovers, there's definitely a pattern emerging from Bohemians where they're sticking in games, they're hard to beat, they're scoring goals. It's a very heady combination.
Yeah, and I'll use the term, they're a League of Ireland team. Okay, so what I mean by that is Keith Buckley came back, was away for a year. Keith Buckley's gone back into the midfield and being excellent. Keith Buckley was out the other day with a niggle, so they bring in Adam MacDonald, who has huge running power, played for Sligo last year. He went into the 10, probably not his best position, but again, it was away in a Dublin derby, away to Pats, and they were very, very controlled in what they've done. Won comfortably in the end. There wasn't a lot in the game, to be fair to Pats, but it was about the performances. Was very much a League of Ireland performance. And we spoke here a couple of weeks ago about Johnny Afolabi needing a goal, and he got a great goal early in that game, and that filled him with confidence. And they've hit the ground running because they had Declan appointed early last year. They signed players last year. They didn't bring a host of loan players in, what other clubs done, and they've hit the ground running. I think they're probably short to sustain that over the season, but sometimes, watch this, Shane. Sometimes momentum carries you all the way.
He's loving that. He's loving
something. That. But no, look, I think Bohs have done their business right, and they're a League of Ireland team for now. And this, going back to the weather and all of that stuff, they're suited to where they're at. But there's a bit of quality to them as well too.
The Louth derby tonight. A fixture you've experienced plenty of times yourself, Vinny. But how does it compare to the Dublin derbies? Like, is it the same kind of hatred back and forth there? Stephen O'Donnell has a top. They've actually both started reasonably well this season. Yeah,
no, Kevin Doherty's done a really good job, because Drogheda people probably thought it'd be them and UCD battling out at the bottom, and they've got a good start to themselves. That'll be there's a lot of hatred there, and it can be. I know when I experienced it, Drogheda weren't that good at the time, so we probably had a handy against them. We've won some of the games comfortably, but there was also times where you go up to United Park and they put it up to you, and a little bit of nastiness would creep in. So it has the same Dublin derby feel to it when you go to a Dublin derby. The fans they don't like each other in any way, shape or form, and that'll be a proper intensity about that game tonight. I think being a Thursday night is actually interesting, because I do often say trying different things, but the game will be more or less a sellout anyway, but it'll be a really good atmosphere in it, and a lot of choice words coming from the stands aimed at each other, so it'll be really good, really interesting game.
Are Derry about where we would expect them to be? Like, obviously there's a big transitional period happening where everything is kind of moving on to hopefully a long-term plan and an even keel, and when that happens, sometimes we can have expectations that are slightly out of whack. They're unbeaten after 5 games, they're second in the table, they're going to be pretty happy with how life has gone. They've come to Rovers and they've beaten them.
I suppose it's funny, knowing Rory Higgins, he'd be a bit disappointed he hadn't picked up more points. They were very dominant against Dundalk on Friday. 60-65% the ball. Dundalk set in, went up and looked for a point and got it. So probably Derry's biggest fear for me has been, or the biggest area of improvement is around the back forward. You've got real talent in the forward area. You've got some exceptional players. We've seen that a couple of weeks ago, the way they cut open Shamrock Rovers. But Cameron Dummigan is missing at the moment. He's a right back, probably the best player in the league last year outside of Gaffney. McJanet, their captain, is injured, and Mark Connolly got what looked like, a proper hamstring where he's sprinting, and it's one of them we pulled up. They don't have the strength and depth around the back four to carry that, so that's a big challenge for them. I felt the area of improvement was around their back four, and then to be out without 3 of them is going to really test them. So it's a big test for Derry over the next couple of weeks in terms of how many of them players they can get back. Obviously the international window will help them, but that's going to be a challenge for them, for me. But have a great start to the season, playing really well, really comfortable. McElhenney looks like he's where he is. They've managed him quite well. I always say he's probably the best player in the league alongside Jack Bourne for talent reasons, and they've Michael Duffy to come back into that team. So they're really in a good place, and they can take a little bit of confidence from Rovers struggling, because there's not a lot of pressure on them. They're not chasing Rovers, winning 5 out of 5, and they're already a couple of points behind. They're in a good position.
Yeah, it's a good opportunity for them to try and build up a bit of a lead and just kind of get that cushion. Like all the talk has been that they are in a title race, so there is pressure at some level, and you would hope their expectation is that they're going to be able to sustain that over the course of the season.
Well, that's why I want this Rovers team to be tested. I think they're a great team, but to be a great team, I think you need to be tested. So what I mean by that is take this Friday, they play Pats, and Derry are winning 2-0, right? They haven't really had this experience where if it's 0-0 in Tala between them and Pats after 55, 60 minutes, you go and take a risk.
Yeah,
and you go
because
and
it matters, because it hasn't mattered.
Yeah,
it hasn't mattered.
Hasn't mattered, as in they've always had a bit of a cushion, you would say, once the season got going, and that's the different mentality, and people don't understand that. And someone asked me during the week, what does it take to win a league? And not that I'm an expert in any way, shape, or form, but being involved in a couple of league-winning teams, I said it's very difficult to answer that, other than to say probably a bit of calmness. If you can have a bit of calmness, and that's probably the best word I can use for, if Derry continue to win, then as it currently stands, I think what Rovers would have to be, Derry would have to lose 3 games and Rovers have to win 3 more now. Now, it's very early for that, but the longer that stays there, then you go chasing a game, you take a chance, you get a corner in the 85th minute and you send an extra player in, and all of a sudden you're done a counter-attack. And that's what I want to see this Rovers team tested. Do I think they'll pass the test? Yeah, I think they're a great team, but let's test them.
Well, and the other side to that is that the opposition suddenly aren't feeling like they're beaten in every game going out against Rovers. That there's no kind of last 10 minutes where Rovers are going to do us here because they're Rovers, and sure, that'll be grand, we can accept that.
Yeah, you always get that where a point against Shamrock Rovers is a good result, and most teams will think that. You probably think that about Derry as well. I think the difference in our league now at the moment is, no matter who you are, you think you can pick up points against everyone else. As in, I think you think 3 points are on the table against everybody else, and that's where there's a huge amount of teams now are very similar standard, and that's where you're seeing results up and down.
Who's the pick of that tier of teams just below Derry and Shamrock Rovers? And I suppose you've got Bows, Dundalk, Sligo Rovers maybe would consider themselves amongst that as well, but who's the pick of them? Yeah,
no, the pick of them at the moment was Bows. I thought Pats would be. They've had a difficult start to the season, and we'll see how that one plays out, but I like to look at what Dundalk have done. A lot of the loan signings look like they're a really high standard, but the problem is they only signed 3 or 4 of them over the last 2 weeks. If they can get a settled team very quickly, Daniel Kelly looks like he's hurt his hamstring again. That's a huge blow to them. Hoban is like, because it's Dundalk and because it's outside of Dublin, genuinely don't get the feeling how big of a player that person is. He's outstanding for them. He's probably fitter now than he has been in a couple of years because he's had a run of games. Over 100 times he scored for Dundalk. I think he's chasing down. He's 6 or 7 goals from the all-time goal scorer. And I often hear you talk about GAA players getting the records and the standards, or if they walk into a ground, the amount of kids that run around. You want to see like we done a soccer camp for underage kids in Dundalk a couple of years ago, and the players came down. I brought them down to meet the kids, sign different things. But when Hoban walked in, it was your Clifford moment, right? And I'll find it. I'll send it to you. I'll find it on one of the socials or whatever, YouTube. But I think he can, if they get him fit and get players around him or stay fit, they could be the pick of the bunch, right? And that go and push someone on.
Well, all of a sudden, while Rovers are having their little moments, everybody else must be thinking, let's go on, let's just see what happens.
Pick up points, yeah.
And you've got to remember, so there's 10 team league, 4 teams get into Europe, 3 and 1 in the cup, but generally the top 3 teams will win a cup, so a 40% chance. And then the rewards for Europe are absolutely huge. They're huge. Anyone that it's probably, you would say you're nearly guaranteed somewhere around $500,000. Okay, that's $500,000 for literally nothing, for want of a better word, for one game. And win a game or 2, you're heading for £1 million. That's huge investment for a League One club.
Yeah.
So that's the dream. If if you were doing an interview, I haven't done many of them, but if you were doing an interview, you talk about Europe. That's my advice to coaches coming through, and how you get a team to Europe, because that's what owners want for obvious reasons.
All right. Any last one? So you don't expect any surprises in the squad name today, really?
No, I would imagine just on the squad, have a little look at maybe Ireland having a McGrath, Knight, Malumbi, Cullen combination as a sort of a box in midfield. That would be the one for me, particularly with Ida missing. Have a look at that. And before we move on, just to give a special mention, the Irish under-17s.
Oh yeah,
it's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge. And what's really important about it is sometimes I come in here and give out about funding and different things. It's so much home-based. And it's actually not just home-based, as in Pats, Rovers and Bowls have a big element to this. But there's players from Wexford, Cork, Derry as well. And what we're doing at underage level, obviously Colin O'Brien has done a brilliant job as head coach. But what the academies in League of Ireland are doing, despite this big change and all the trouble, they're helping this international team. Some people deserve huge credit. Rovers, Pats, Bowls, as I said, but also there's players coming from outside of it as well. And that's really, really important what we're doing, and to say we're actually able to do this despite of everything else. And I'll just throw this one at you to maybe for years to investigate or to take on. Look at the Irish government giving £500,000 to GAA in New York. I'm not going to say anything other than it's not heartbreaking, but don't forget us, lads. We're still here.
Look, feel free to have that conversation, because it is like I've been to the annual dinner dance in Gaelic Park, and they have access to a load of money, because there's a lot of rich Irish businessmen who've made and who are sending loads of money back and are sponsoring like teams here, but are sponsoring the team out there. New York floats on a pile of Irish money. I'm not being critical of it. Fair play to them. But it is a bit strange that Micheál Martin goes over and goes, here's 500 grand from the Irish Exchequer for an organisation that can actually, it serves a function, but it's self-sustaining, and it can generate its own cash. Yeah, and I think it's important that I say, so because I bring this stuff up probably regularly, it's important to say I know there's a huge amount of work on the FEI in the background, and I hope in time there'll be some sort of announcement in terms of some, so I'm not saying anyone is sitting on their hands, I'm not saying nothing's going on, and it takes time, but when you look at our under-17s competing internationally, and having the Brexit to deal with, where these players would have been developed, or 16, 17 year olds on when Brian Kerr done it with the great Noel O'Reilly, a lot of them lads were like, Robbie was in Wolves, or Celtic, Richard was in Everton, and all this stuff. This has been done from here, and it's been done through hard work and despite of everything else. So I'm just saying, maybe some people need to say it's brilliant for New York. I'm not begrudging them a penny of that money, but hey, we're doing all right ourselves, and with a little bit more help, we might even do a bit better. All right, that's as politically as correct as I can put it. Yeah, no, it's a fair point to raise at the end there. Drop the bomb, mic drop, walk off into the sunset. We'll see what happens, but we'll definitely follow that story up. It's 9:08. That is our weekly League of Ireland slot there. Vinny Perth, thanks very much.